The scent of roasted turkey and cinnamon rolls hung in the air, but the warmth in Marcus Hartley's dining room was anything but inviting. Crystal glasses caught the light from the chandelier, the silverware polished to his impossible standards. 12 people sat around the table, the Hartley clan in all their carefully dressed glory, waiting for Marcus to hold court like he always did. I kept my head down, focusing on cutting a neat slice of turkey for Ardan, hoping the conversation would skim over me for once. But Marcus never missed an opportunity to remind the room of my place. "You know, Selena here never did finish her degree," he said with a smirk, passing the gravy boat to his sister. "Guess parenting took all her brain power, and yet, she still thinks she knows better than me about how to raise a child." A ripple of polite laughter circled the table. My stomach tightened. I had learned to smile through these moments, to let the comments slide like oil over glass, but something in me refused to shrink this time. "At least I'm raising her to think for herself," I said. My voice steady, though my hands trembled under the table. The air shifted. Marcus's smile faltered. "What was that you heard me?" I replied. My heart hammered, but my eyes stayed locked on his. He set down his fork with deliberate care, the metallic clink sharp in the stillness. "Don't get smart with me in front of my family." "Selena." I knew that tone. It was the one that came before slammed doors, shattered objects, and whispered apologies that never meant anything. But we weren't alone this time. We were surrounded by every relative who had ever watched him tear me down and said nothing. "Maybe they should see the kind of father you are," I said before I could stop myself. The next moment came like lightning fast, bright and impossible to undo. His palm cracked across my cheek, the sound exploding through the room. My head snapped sideways, and a hot sting spread over my skin. The silver carving knife slipped from my fingers and clattered against my plate. Silence followed, heavy and suffocating. I could feel every eye on me some wide with shock. Others narrowed with the quiet satisfaction of seeing me put in my place. Then a voice broke through. "Uncle Everett is going to see—" I turned toward Ardan. She stood at the far end of the table, her phone clutched to her chest, her gaze locked on Marcus with a calm so sharp it could cut. Marcus blinked, confusion flickering into something else entirely. Steam curled from the roasting pan as I basted the turkey, the scent of garlic and herbs filling the kitchen. My sleeves were pushed to my wrists despite the heat, hiding the shadow of bruises blooming along my forearm. Every movement sent a dull ache up my side from the last time Marcus lost patience, but I kept my face neutral, the way I'd trained myself to. "Selena," his voice thundered from the front hall. "Did you polish the silver or not? And those glasses, are they spotless?" "Yes," I called back, careful to keep my tone even. I could already hear the faint irritation in his steps as they drew closer. He filled the doorway a moment later, eyes scanning the counters. "The salad isn't on the table yet, and move those chairs an inch closer. Symmetry matters. My mother will notice." I nodded, setting the bastard down. "I'll take care of it." Marcus lingered, his gaze raking over the room, then over me. "We're hosting the family. No mistakes today. You understand, yes?" I said again. He left without another word, the sound of his shoes clicking down the hall. From the corner of my eye, I saw Ardan perched at the kitchen counter, homework open in front of her but untouched. She watched me with that quiet intensity she'd been carrying lately, her chin resting on her hands. "Mom," she said softly, "are you okay?" The question caught me mid-motion. I forced a smile over my shoulder. "Of course, sweetheart. Just a busy day." Her dark eyes didn't blink. "You don't have to say that if it's not true." I turned back to the turkey, my throat tightening. "I'm fine. Really." She closed her notebook slowly, as if deciding something. "Okay," she said at last, her voice steady, almost too steady for a child. When I glanced back at her, she wasn't looking at me anymore. She was looking at the doorway Marcus had just walked through. Her expression unreadable, but there was a glint in it I couldn't quite name. By mid-morning, the kitchen smelled of cinnamon and roasted sweet potatoes. I was setting the bread basket on the counter when Marcus strode in again, a frown already etched between his brows. "The coffee's cold," he said, setting the mug down with a thud. "And the pie crust, did you even measure the flour right? My mother will notice if it's tough." I bit back a retort and reached for the pot. "I'll make a fresh one." Before I could move, Ardan slid off her stool and looked up at him. "Dad," she said evenly, "be nice to Mom." The air seemed to tighten. Marcus turned his head slowly toward her, his eyes narrowing just enough for me to catch the warning in them. That look had frozen me more times than I could count. "Excuse me." His voice was low, dangerous. "She's been cooking all morning." Ardan continued, her tone almost conversational, "even though she's tired. So maybe be nice." I stepped in quickly. "Ardan, why don't you go check the table for me? Make sure the napkins are straight." She didn't move right away. For a moment, her gaze stayed locked on Marcus's, unflinching in a way that made my heart pound. Then she picked up her workbook from the counter and walked past me, brushing her fingers against my hand as she did. It was a brief touch, so small I almost missed it, but in that squeeze there was something deliberate. I glanced down at her, and she looked up at me with a faint, knowing smile. "Don't worry," she whispered, so quietly I barely heard it over the hum of the oven fan. "I've got it." Before I could ask what she meant, she was gone, her small footsteps retreating toward the dining room. I stood there with the coffee pot in my hand, my pulse still racing, and wondered when my daughter had learned to look at her father without fear. By the time the doorbell rang, the house looked exactly the way Marcus wanted, chairs aligned like soldiers, silver gleaming under the light, food laid out as if it were a magazine spread. I wiped my hands on a dish towel and braced myself. Marcus swung the door open to greet his parents first. His mother swept in, fur collar framing her sharp features, her eyes scanning the living room like a building inspector. "Oh, Selena," she said, kissing the air beside my cheek. "You've done something different with your hair. It's less polished than usual." Before I could answer, Marcus chuckled. "She's been busy. You know how it is." His father clapped Marcus on the shoulder, ignoring me entirely. Behind them came his sister, Elaine, and her husband. Elaine gave me a quick hug, then leaned in just enough to murmur, "You look tired. Is everything okay at home?" Her smile stayed fixed, as though the question were a kindness. "I've been busy with Ardan," I said lightly. "Oh, right. The full-time job you can't quit," she replied with a wink. Marcus laughed again. Each new arrival carried their own brand of commentary: my cooking, my lack of a real career, my supposed luck to have Marcus as a provider. I smiled, nodded, kept my hands busy refilling glasses and straightening napkins, through it all. Ardan moved quietly around the edges of the room. She stayed close enough to me that I could see her, but often lingered just outside the main cluster of relatives. Her phone never left her hand. The screen dimmed, but not off. Once or twice, I caught her angling it subtly toward the conversation, her face neutral, eyes watchful. During a lull, she slipped into the corner near the piano, half hidden by the tall back of an armchair. Her gaze roamed from one face to another, pausing longest on Marcus whenever he spoke. She didn't fidget. She didn't look bored. She looked like she was waiting. I turned back to the table, forcing myself to stay in motion, but the image of her standing there, silent and deliberate, stayed with me. Something about it made the room feel colder, as if there was more going on beneath the surface than anyone else realized. The first half hour of dinner was a performance: Marcus carving the turkey with exaggerated precision, his family offering polite toasts, laughter rising at all the right cues. But as the plates filled and the wine glasses emptied, the familiar undercurrent began to show. Elaine started it, her tone sweet but her words barbed. You know, Selena, you've always been so accommodating, never one to make a fuss about anything. She knows her place, Marcus said, smiling at her like it was a compliment. My fork paused halfway to my mouth. His mother nodded approvingly. Not like these young women nowadays, always chasing careers instead of taking care of their families. You're lucky Marcus married you. Dear, he's been a steady rock. Kevin, Marcus's cousin, leaned back in his chair. Remember when you talked about going back to school? What was it, nursing? Marcus put his foot down. Can't have you wasting time on silly dreams. Laughter, a few sympathetic smirks. I focused on cutting a piece of turkey, the knife's edge pressing harder into the plate than necessary. It didn't stop there. They dissected my cooking, my appearance, my overly sensitive nature. Each remark was delivered with a smile, as though cruelty softened by politeness could be mistaken for concern. Ardan had gone still beside me, her fork resting untouched on her plate. Her eyes flicked between speakers, sharp and unblinking. I swallowed a mouthful of lukewarm wine and set the glass down. My place, I said quietly, isn't just to serve food and keep the peace while everyone here takes turns reminding me I'm not enough. The table stilled. All eyes turned to me. Marcus's smile disappeared. Selena, I'm tired of pretending this is normal, I continued, my voice steadier than I felt. Tired of swallowing every insult so no one has to feel uncomfortable. His chair scraped back suddenly, the sound slicing through the tension. He rose slowly, looming over me, the shadow of his frame falling across my plate. That's enough, he said, his voice low. Dangerous. You will not disrespect me in my house. I kept my gaze on him, even as my pulse pounded in my ears. The rest of the room blurred, the clink of cutlery replaced by a heavy silence. Arden's hand slid to her lap, fingers brushing her phone. The air between Marcus and me was taut, the kind of stillness that comes just before a storm. The sharp crack of his palm against my cheek split the silence like glass shattering on tile. My head snapped sideways, the sting blooming hot across my skin. For a heartbeat. The room seemed to tilt every breath, every creak of a chair amplified in my ears. Around the table, reactions fractured like light through a prism. Elaine's mouth dropped open. Kevin's eyes darted to his plate. Marcus's mother only pursed her lips, as if this was inevitable. Marcus stood over me, chest rising and falling, his hand still half raised. Don't you ever speak to me like that in front of my family, he said, each word bitten off. The room was so still I could hear the faint tick of the clock in the hallway. Then came a voice, clear and unwavering. Uncle Everett is going to see. My head turned toward Ardan. She had risen from her chair at the far end of the table, her phone clutched against her chest. Her dark eyes were locked on Marcus, steady and cold. What Marcus's voice was sharp, but the edge of it faltered. She took a step forward. I've been recording you, Dad, for weeks. A ripple of unease passed around the table, his brow furrowed, recording what her grip tightened on the phone. When you yell at Mom, when you shove her, when you call her names, I have all of it. And I sent it to Uncle Everett this morning. The color drained from his face. His gaze flicked to the rest of the family, but no one met his eyes. You're lying, he said, but it came out weaker than I'd ever heard from him. Ardan tilted her head slightly, like she was studying him. Am I? The silence that followed was heavier than any shouting match we'd ever had in this house. Marcus's jaw clenched, but his hand lowered. Arden's thumb hovered over her screen, her voice still calm. He said to tell you he's going to watch everything, and then he's coming here. Marcus's composure slipped another inch. I saw it the first crack in the armor he wore so well. Ardan didn't lower her gaze, not even when Marcus took a step toward her. "You want to know what I sent him?" she asked, her voice steady. "The time you shoved Mom into the wall because dinner was late. The time you threw a glass at her and it shattered by her feet. The time you told her she was worthless and no one would ever believe her." Her words landed like stones in still water, sending ripples through the room. Marcus froze mid-step. "You're making this up." Ardan shook her head. "No. I've got it all right here. Every clip, every date, and Uncle Everett already has copies. I sent them this morning." A murmur ran around the table. Elaine pushed back her chair slightly, her expression guarded. Kevin leaned away from Marcus as if his proximity might somehow implicate him. Even Marcus's mother's posture shifted, her shoulders pulling back from his. Marcus tried to laugh, but it came out brittle. "You think some videos are going to—" "They're not just videos," Ardan cut in. "I've got recordings too. Of what you said, how you said it. I made sure your voice is clear every time." I could see the panic building in his eyes, the quick flicks toward his family as if he were silently calculating who might still be on his side. No one looked at him now. "What did you tell him?" Marcus asked finally, his voice tight. "That we need help," she said simply. "That you hurt Mom and think you can get away with it. He told me to send everything, and then he told me to tell you one thing: he's coming here." The room felt smaller suddenly, the air thick and unsteady. Marcus opened his mouth to speak, but the sound of a car pulling into the driveway cut him off. The front door swung open without a knock, and Uncle Everett filled the doorway, his frame broad, posture straight, eyes sweeping the room in one sharp pass. Two men stepped in behind him, both in plain clothes but carrying themselves with the crisp precision of military training. "Marcus," Everett said, his tone flat. "Sit down." Marcus's mouth opened, but the weight in Everett's voice pressed him back into his chair. Everett set a thick envelope on the table. "I've seen the recordings, the verbal abuse, the shoving, the objects you threw at your own daughter's mother, all of it." His gaze shifted to the rest of the family. "And I know you all witnessed it. That makes your silence part of the problem." Elaine looked down. Kevin shifted uncomfortably. Marcus's mother's lips pressed into a thin line. One of Everett's companions stepped forward. "Producing a document. This is a temporary restraining order, effective immediately. You are to have no contact with Selena or Ardan." "This is my house," Marcus snapped, his voice shaking. "Not anymore," Everett said. "Given the evidence of domestic violence, Selena has exclusive occupancy until the court says otherwise. You'll collect your things under supervision, then leave." The second man placed a small recorder on the table. "For the record, Mr. Hartley, any violation of this order will result in immediate arrest." Marcus looked around at the table, searching for an ally. None met his eyes. Everett's gaze locked on him. "You don't intimidate me, and you're not going to hurt them again. You have 10 minutes to start packing." The sound of Marcus's chair scraping back was the only reply. Everett stood in the doorway of my bedroom while I pulled 2 duffel bags from the closet. "Only what you need tonight," he said quietly. "We'll come back for the rest." Ardan moved quickly beside me, folding her clothes with a precision that told me she'd already decided what mattered. I grabbed my documents, a few changes of clothes, the photo of her as a toddler with cake smeared across her face. Down the hall. Drawers slammed. Marcus's footsteps approached, heavy and uneven. He appeared in the doorway, his expression a strange mix of anger and desperation. "Selena," he started, "I can change. I'll get help. Don't destroy our family over this." Ardan straightened, her small frame blocking my path to him. "Fathers protect their family," she said, her voice clear. "You're just the man who used to live here." Marcus flinched like she'd struck him. Everett stepped forward, his presence filling the space between us. "You heard her? Time to go." We walked past Marcus, the air in the hallway thick with everything unspoken. At the front door. I took one last look at the house, the carefully arranged furniture, the walls that had learned to hold their breath. Outside, the night air was cool and clean, a different kind of silence settling over me. Ardan climbed into the back seat of Everett's SUV, and I followed, feeling the first loosened thread of a knot I'd carried for years as the tires rolled away from the curb. I kept my eyes forward. The house behind us was no longer mine to keep or to survive. 6 months later, our apartment is small but full of light. The walls are painted a soft cream, the windows open to the sound of birds instead of slammed doors. The restraining order still stands. Marcus hasn't come near us. Most mornings. I'm at the kitchen table with my textbooks, halfway to finishing the degree he once told me I wasn't smart enough for. Ardan works on her homework across from me, her hair falling into her face as she scribbles answers. She's doing well in school, better than ever. Her teachers say she's focused, engaged, curious. I know part of it is relief, the freedom to live without measuring every word, every movement. One afternoon, I found her in the courtyard with a girl from her class. They sat close, heads bent over Ardan's old phone. Later, she told me the girl's stepfather yells and throws things. Ardan had shown her how to record safely, where to store the files, and who to trust with them. "She'll be okay," Ardan said, with the certainty of someone who's already walked that road. I looked at her then, not just my daughter, but the girl who had changed the course of our lives with quiet courage and a plan. In our family, I told her, we protect each other and bullies always face consequences. She smiled, a flash of the child she still is and the woman she's becoming. And I knew the rule would hold long after both of us stopped needing to say it aloud.